Hi, I'm Evan Dorn, Associate Editor at Modern Machine Shop, and I'll be your moderator today. Today's webinar, Balloon Your Print in 2 Minutes, Speeding the QA Process, is presented by Ryan Ganser, Regional Sales Director at HiQA. His presentation will focus on features within HiQA that can speed up ballooning, first article inspection, GD&T recording, and more. If you have questions for Ryan, please use the Q&A box on the right side of your screen. As a reminder, today's webinar is being recorded and will be available for on-demand viewing shortly after today's session. With that, I'll turn it over to Ryan. Take it away.
Thanks, Evan. And thank you everybody for joining us here for the next hour for this overview demonstration of the HiQA solution. So before we jump into the demo itself, we will just spend a couple of minutes really educating you all on who HiQA is and we'll kind of overview what you'll see here today in terms of our one-click ballooning capabilities, in which we'll automatically extract the GD&T into the HiQA database. A couple of things to emphasize here today. At no point are you going to see me cut and paste or save as, put something in a folder, or really go outside of the HiQA database. Everything is saved centrally within the database in real time in such a way where you're never having to go to outside systems. With that, you'll be able to see how we integrate and automatically generate all of your reporting needs, whether that be a first article or full-blown submission package like a PPAP or AQPP documentation. So real quick about HiQA. We were founded just over 10 years ago in 2015. We currently serve over 1,500 customers on 5 different continents, really focusing in the industries of aerospace, defense, medical, and automotive. So you can see some of the larger OEM customers we have up here at the top, as well as their supply chain manufacturers. I do like to emphasize that it's not an all or nothing solution. Plans are customized in terms of what you need and ultimately what your budget is. So just to give you an idea, I mean, we have 2-person shops as customers even. Okay, our stated vision, mission, and values. Our vision is to simplify and automate manufacturing quality, quite simply. And our mission in doing so is to be on time, on budget, and on quality. Our core values being innovation, integrity, and teamwork. So this image that you now see on our screen, it's a good image to kind of visualize everything that can be done inside of the database. As I mentioned earlier, we are a database-driven solution. So all of these different areas that you see on this left-hand side, this wheel, can be done inside the database. And like I said, it doesn't have to be all or nothing, can be customized, but HiQA stands for high quality automation. We're all about automating manual tasks, improving efficiencies, and promoting consistencies as such a software does. Being a database driven, these different areas, whether that be part and job planning, production and data collection, reporting and submissions, or even supplier collaboration, these different areas are all connected and working with one another. Often having all this information in our database, that data can be used in a variety of ways, often automatically. So really the goal is time savings, efficiencies, and consistencies, all inside a centralized database. With that, let's jump into the software. Okay, so what you're seeing now is HiQA, and we are an on-premise solution. So as you saw on that customer list, a lot of customers in the aerospace, defense, medical industries. The point being, from a security standpoint, being on premise, we're not leaving your network walls. So we are ITAR compliant, approaching CMMC compliance as well in our certification. So I'm going to bring in a print, a simple PDF that I have saved on my desktop. Okay, so pretty simple machined part that we have here. I can move it around with my mouse. I can zoom in on the print. I can zoom out if I want. General layout of this interface, just think of it as like any Microsoft or Windows application. And by that I just mean ribbons will be up here on the top with various drop down menus for each icon. For us, everything starts at the automatic ballooning stage, getting these dimensions identified and extracted into the database. That's certainly our biggest claim to fame and the title of today's webinar. And that's, like I said, where everything starts for us. So up here at the top, I'm clicking auto balloon. And we do have different preferences. So if you have multiple pages, you can balloon them all at once. Or, maybe you only care about pages 2, 3, and 4. You can balloon just those select pages. This is just a one-page print, so I'll stick with the current page here. You can also tell the system that maybe you don't care about basic or reference dimensions, things like that. I'm just going to click OK. And at this point, we're sending our print through our OCR technology. For those not aware, OCR stands for optical character recognition, and it is a proprietary technology. Literally it took our team 6 years to develop what you're going to see here wrap up shortly. It is, as I said earlier, definitely our biggest claim to fame. Can confidently say second to none in the industry, and that it was designed specifically for reading manufacturing prints, GD&T recognition. So now you can see here, we're ballooned. Even more, I would say, important and or impressive is what we have down below. We call this our bill of characteristics. Scroll this up here. This is everything we extracted in that, I think it said 19 seconds, all saved to the database in real time. Quite simply, this is your inspection plan. So to highlight a couple of the features, we have our dimension numbers, dimension types, requirements. If there are any multipliers, we will auto recognize those. If I scroll down, you can see we got some 4x here. And we can do some cool things with those as well. We'll touch on that here in a bit. Nominals, tolerancing, all saved to the database. I'll keep repeating myself because it is um, worth emphasizing. You can always export things out into different formats, Excel most commonly. I always say the system is designed to be fully paperless and digital, but it doesn't have to be. We do offer the flexibility of, maybe before going fully paperless, starting off just less paper. So if I wanted to export my inspection plan out to Excel, up here at the top, I would click inspection reports, my inspection planner drop down, and then everything is templatized inside of HiQA from a reporting standpoint. So these are just two examples that I have on my system. Let's just show what a 10 sample inspection plan looks like. This is going to export out into Excel. And it's on my other screen. So this again is just one example. Your logo would obviously be up here at the top. Down below, here's my inspection plan. Over here to the right, here's my 10 pieces that I could type in the results and import that back into the database with a little snapshot of the balloon print. That's the most manual way of doing things. We'll get into some of the more automated and digital ways of doing things. So next, I'm going to talk about the concept of part categories. So if I flip to our part properties tab here, you can see up here in the top right, and also just at all times, think of this right-hand window as a peek into the database. You'll be able to see what the system automatically comes up with the ability to edit as you need to. These are all open text fields. But talking about our part categories up here, you can see I'm under Ganser Machine as my part category. The easiest or quickest way to describe what a part category is just think of it as like a series of defaults or preferences. with the mindset of getting things set up ahead of time based on those preferences and defaults so that you can automate downstream. So a couple of different factors that will roll up into part categories. One would be how I'm going to sample, which you can see down here below. My part category is set up to sample at 1 per lot. You can always change things after the fact, right? If it's X per lot with a value of 1, or if I want to sample from an AQL table, percent from lot, per hour, per shift, I can. Again, that's just my part category. And a lot of our customers will use these part categories for their customers or part types, part families, things like that. But again, just series of defaults, set it up ahead of time in such a way to automate downstream. Okay. So if the tolerance is called out on the print, so like this balloon 15 here, this plus plus, you can see over here to the right, we will bring those in. If it's not, so let's just look at this balloon 12 here, this 2-inch, this plus or minus 10 thou, that's coming from a decimal table um, that I have set up in the background, which also rolls up into those part categories. So essentially my system says that if it's a 2-inch, or if it's a 2 decimal places, sorry, we will default to plus or minus 10 thou. Again, part of those part categories. Next, we have this gauge category, which you can see down here below on my inspection plan, and over here to the right as a peek into the database. Also rolls up into these part categories, and it's determined by dimension type. So my system is set up to say that if it's a linear, we're going to use a caliper. And it's a category of a caliber. It's not an individual. That'll streamline to our gauge management tool, which will ultimately communicate out to the shop floor for data collection. Hey, you're going to use a caliper. Here's your available non-expired calipers. Now at that point, you can digitally check in and check out. If that doesn't make sense now, it certainly will in a couple of seconds. But again, it's the mindset of doing everything in one spot, collaborating so there's no interpretation between departments. And then ultimately, by doing everything in one spot, you have a lot of visibility and traceability in terms of what was done. Okay. So our OCR, which I said earlier, stands for optical character recognition. It's going to scan starting in the top left, going left to right, top to bottom. Anything that's connected to the outer border, we're not going to look inside of. So like our title block, for example. But we have different, up here in the top left, I call these efficiency tools. We'll touch on a couple of them here today. The first being this extract title block text. So this is how we can extract information from our title block and save it to the database. So let's go back to where we were at the part properties. So if you notice our part number and part name here, by default, that's just the file name that I brought in. If I wanted to extract information, I just box select, click, drag, drop. Now I can tell the system, all right, this is our part name. So now you'll notice that part name field gets auto-populated with what I just captured. Do the same thing with part number. So now this information being saved to the database, any report that we'll generate, which is templatized to have fields of the part name and part number, it's going to automatically populate with what's saved in the database. Do the same thing with our rev here. I like to point out that rev because it is a different size and style text. So being able to identify that is with our OCR, it's a differentiator. Now at the end of the day, it is just one letter. So as I said, these are open text fields. I could just type in that B if I wanted. Okay, so we talked about the notes. We talked about the tolerances coming from a table. For those of you that are required to balloon notes, we're not going to auto balloon notes strategically. There's really just no standard for us to do so, but we can capture them using this T icon that I'm hovering over in the top left to balloon notes. By me clicking that icon, we're automatically flipping our OCR to no longer look for GD&T. We're just looking for text. And just as I did with the part name and part number, I box select. And you can notice down below, as part of our inspection plan, I now have dimensions 25, 26, 27 as a note. If I wanted to add my own note, I can, just over here to the right, because again, these are open text fields. And then on the drawing itself, we do have automatic leader lines. Just as things get a little condensed, you can clean things up that way. And everything that you are seeing here today is customizable in terms of like colors, shapes, sizes. This is just how my system's set up. And when we go to acquire the data, a lot of customers will just treat these notes as like a pass fail. Okay, so next we have our material. So just below the T icon to balloon notes, we have the M to balloon material. And again, I'm box selecting. Click, drag, drop. Top right of the screen, we automatically flip to our materials and processes tab, and you can see the T6 that I just captured. At any point, if you ever see a pencil inside HiQA, that gives you the opportunity to drill down and add more information if you want to. So like if I wanted to include a material code, a spec, or cert number, I can. I can indicate who my supplier is. I can upload attachment files. Most commonly here would be like a material cert. Again, everything's saved to the database. Any form that requires material certs even, automatically going to be generated. Okay. Next, let's look at this balloon 16. This one's interesting. I like to point this one out for a couple of reasons. One, it is a stacked dimension, right? Diameter, thread, true position. Also, we have a 4x for our 4 holes here. So really at the end of the day, there's 12 lines, right? Lines of data, the 4 times 3. So it's in the database either way. We just have different ways of viewing things. My system, as you can see, is set up to balloon it as one single balloon, 16, and then down below 16.1, 0.2, and 0.3. If you wanted these to be 3 separate balloons, 16, 17, 18, you can. Also, if you wanted to explode the multipliers out, over here to the right, I click this multiply dimensions button. Now, you'll notice down below all 12 callouts are shown. 16.1 underscore 1, all the way down to 16.3 underscore 4. And then also I have these little sub balloons. This is just how my system's set up. If I wanted to drag them over the individual holes, I can. Okay. All right. So for those of you that get hand-drawn, scanned-in prints from the 1970s, I don't want to give the expectation that we're going to auto balloon and capture every dimension with 100% accuracy. Just unrealistic. If the resolution's not there, there's only so much the automation can do. Blanket statement, however, doesn't matter the level quality of drawing, of print. You're going to be able to fully balloon, capture all the dimensions, and report on it inside of HiQA. You're not going to have to leave the system. So let's just pretend we missed, I don't know, maybe this balloon 12. It's right in the middle. So I'm just going to delete this one. Another efficiency tool we have, I'm hovering over it now, is called whiteout balloons up here in the top left. If I click that, it hides everything that's already been captured. So now it becomes very obvious what still needs to be ballooned. At this point, I can just zoom in and box select. Over here to the right-hand side, double check what the system comes up with. We have a 2-inch based on the decimal points, plus or minus 10 thou. Based on it being a linear, I'm going to use a caliper. Also, for those of you that are required to designate different levels of criticality, this drop down is where you would have your specific designators, critical to qualities, keys, majors, minors, whatever you need, build your own. Let's just pretend this was a CTQ, critical to quality. By me designating that as a CTQ, that drove automation in a couple of different places based on how my system is set up. On my inspection plan, I'll call out the designator, CTQ. I also have it set up so that automatically, if I designate something as critical to quality, we'll flip to an AQL-based sampling. And then on the drawing itself, I have it set up to go from a circle to a hexagon, right? Just visually, this is different. This is critical. And now most of you are probably noticing that we're out of sequence, 11, 28, 13, just because I deleted it and then added it. So it kind of goes to the end. If you want to get things back in order, just click numbering up here at the top. Now we're back in sequence. Also, for those of you that are working in metric or English, maybe you get a customer print in metric, but your shop prefers to work in English or vice versa. This tool is designed to be very collaborative, whether that be internally through different departments or externally based on what your customers prefer. So if you want to switch units, you just click these 2 arrows up here at the top. There's metric, there's English. So when we originally auto ballooned this print, we already did the conversions for both. So you're not going to have to, use a calculator or Excel or worry about missing a decimal point or anything like that. The system does it automatically for you. Okay. So now I'm going to touch on our gauge management tool super quickly, and then we'll break this part down into operations for some like in-process checks. And then we'll get into the data collection side of things, where we'll go out to the shop floor data collection interface for like your manual checks, calipers, mics, stuff like that. And then I'll also simulate data collection coming automatically from like a CMM or any automated measurement device. So up here at the very top, we have this measurement gauges tab. When I click that, it's kind of what you'd expect. It's a list of all of my gauges. We do have different colors signaling different things. If it's maroon, like this bore gauge and mic, it'll be with an exclamation point. That just signals that we're approaching expiration. Or if it's actually red itself with that little stop sign, that just means a gauge actually has expired. We do have notification settings where you or groups can even get emailed if a gauge expires or is approaching expiration. And then down below, general gauge information. This is my caliper 2. It belongs to the caliper category, where it's located, calibration details, stuff like that. The biggest benefit of using our gauge management tool, well, I guess there's a couple, but being that it's all in one spot, right? You're not having to go to different systems or anything like that. Communicating out to the shop floor. And then the biggest benefit I would say is having that traceability usage history, right? Because you're doing everything in one spot, I have all of this information. So if I click my usage history tab, for this specific caliper, I know every part, job, lot, dimension that's been measured. I know the results of each measurement. I can see if there's been any nonconformance generated against this gauge. I can see who used it. I can see when they used it. So from a traceability standpoint, it's all right here. Okay, so that's the gauge management in a high level overview. Next, we'll break this part down into ops for some in-process checks. So I'm clicking this manufacturing operations tab. Now my system goes to this kind of bluish green color to signal that we're at the finished part op. So by default, we have our finished part operation. If I wanted to assign dimensions to an op, I would just hold control and click the dimensions I'm interested in. And then I'll click add operation over here to the right. So now we're going to create an op. There we are. Op 10 in yellow. There she is. Op 10 in yellow. Op 20 in purple. Do one more. And op 30 in pink. Now it's all linked to one another, right? You can see we have multiple colors assigned to the same dimension. So same balloon, just sub op 10, 20, 30. We have these pencils again. So if you recall, I can add more information by clicking in here. I can name this, maybe my roughing up. I can tie it to a work cell, a machine, or even a process, which for those of you that are creating submission packages, process flows, control plans, what I'm doing by tying this to a process, I'm literally building my control plan and process flows. Maybe call this drilling op, tied to my drilling process. And last one, we'll do turning, tie it to my turning process. But these processes will be your processes, which will tie into a process library, your process library, that is set up in the background to really drive automation in a lot of different ways. Also, we do have the ability to connect to ERPs where we can push and pull these operations through the integration. Okay. I can filter by these operations. So if I click this manufacturing operations dropdown, maybe I only want to look at my roughing op. I now have a print specific for, in this case, the roughing op. I can send it out as an Excel sheet, like I showed at the beginning of the call. I can send it out as a PDF. Maybe before doing that, I want to update some things. So I can click bulk update here. And now I'm updating my requirements, but in this case, only for the roughing op. So if I'm looking at the nominal, I can add, subtract, multiply, or increase by a percentage. Maybe for my roughing pass, I'm going to add 20 thou. Change the tolerance to plus 50, minus 40. I can change how I want to sample. Same options that we looked at before. I can also tell the system, hey, I want to monitor these dimensions for SPC by clicking that checkbox. So from an SPC perspective, we have being database driven, right? We have all these data points inside of the system. We can monitor for SPC in real time. So from like a preventative approach, hey, we're not out of control yet, but we're approaching, right? You're getting those charts delivered to you in real time. Maybe it's time to, change a tool or whatever the case may be. But also retroactively, if you have a customer that asks for SPC on a dimension 6 months down the road, you literally just come back into the job and the part, flag that dimension, all the data's there. Okay, so now that we've created our ops, updated the requirements at, in this case, the roughing op, let's get into some of the data collection stuff. So this is our shop floor data collection module, where you can log in, you can also scan in. This is what the folks out on the shop floor would be seeing for like their manual checks, calipers, mics, stuff like that. It is much more lightweight than the main system. Can be run on iPads, tablets, or even just lightweight computers out on the shop floor. Looks very similar to the main system that we took a look at. My balloon drawing, little tolerance bar down below. So doing the math for them. Let's just say I was in charge of the roughing operation. Where again, if I'm in charge of roughing, I'm not being confused with all these additional dimensions. I'm only being asked to measure, in this case, these 5 dimensions. Where if you see over here in the top, remember I added 20 thou to the requirement, plus 50 minus 40 as my tolerancing. And then because it's a linear dimension, I'm going to use a caliper. That's my gauge category. So when I go to select my tool and gauge, I'm only showing, in this case, calipers that have not expired, just to show I got 3 that have expired. Now this is where I can digitally select my caliper 2 and enter in my results. A good check will turn green and auto toggle to the next dimension to be measured. To show it again here. Good check will turn green and auto toggle to the next dimension. Now, if you notice this measured results box is blinking at me, we do support wireless or Bluetooth gauges. But as I'm doing it, I'm just manually typing this in. So there is the potential for human error, right? Let's just pretend I mistakenly typed in 40. We'll get a little error message notifying me that this is out of tolerance. This is where I could say, you know what, I fat fingered it, need to measure it again, or potentially no, this was a failed check. I'll click keep failed, where we now have the option to populate a non-conformance at the point of failure, or again, because I'm doing everything in one spot, I already know the job, I already know the person, I already know the date, I already know the lot. It's all auto filled out for me. This would be your defect types here, as well as your defect codes with a little legend promoting what each code means. So again, getting that consistency that we're after, where ultimately you can run reports up against these various NCRs. Let's just say this was a tool break. Okay. Bad checks will turn red. Now let's just pretend that this was a visual check, this next one, or even like a note, for example. Pass fails will just look like this. Click pass or fail. Some of our customers that are utilizing this on iPads for their visual checks, they'll literally take a picture, click this button up here, add that picture as an attachment, pass it, and then move on. So that's the shop floor interface. Again, this is for like your manual calipers, mics, stuff like that, where as you're making the measurements and inspections, record the data digitally, and that'll flow back in to the main system paired up against the inspection plan that we had already created. Okay, so next I'm going to simulate data coming from a CMM. So we have a module, it's called AMDI, Automatic Machine Data Import. Users of this module have the ability to, every time your machines make a measurement, quite literally automatically in the background, those results are coming in to the database that you see here. Not to get too far into the details, but we set up a folder on your network. We map from your machines to those folders. Every time that folder gets populated, we set up the database, HiQA, to listen to those folders and bring the results in automatically and then archive them. So that's a long-winded way of saying every time your machine makes a measurement, we're going to be able to bring in those results in real time. Just eliminating a lot of manual data entry. So I'm not connected to a CMM, so I'm going to simulate that by just importing a CSV file. I'll even just open it up here for everybody to see. So this is the file that I'm about to import, where if this formatting doesn't look exactly like your CMM, BMM, FAROARM, doesn't matter, output, that formatting, that translation between files into HiQA, that's something our team completely sets up for you. The reason I'm importing this file is because we have all these actuals here. So that's the file I'm importing. Where again, bad, failed is red, good is green. If you're wondering why these two are purple, that's the one downside of using a static file. So the last time when I created that CSV file, when I ballooned it the first time, 8 was 9 and 9 was 8. So it's kind of letting me know that something's up here. But if this is coming in real time, that wouldn't be an issue. But then yeah, gray means not yet measured. So over here to the right hand side, you can also enter results through our results editor. Right, a thread not going to be measured by a CMM. And you can see all of our results down here. Okay, so to recap, we ballooned this print. We captured information from the title block. We ballooned some notes, captured our material. We touched on gauge management. We broke this down into operations. And then we got into data collection from the shop floor, from a CMM, and then also from our results editor here in the main interface. So now that we have our results, we're ready to report. So I'm going to go back up to my inspection reports. If you had a simple single piece first article, you just click single piece report. Where, as I mentioned earlier, everything is templatized. So I work a lot with aerospace. I have the AS9102 and NetInspect templates here. Whatever forms you guys have as part of onboarding, we're going to implement those forms as a template. So let's just take a look at the AS9102. Okay, this is form 1 of the AS9102, where again, this would be your logo up at the top. Here's all the part number and part name information that we captured at the beginning. Here's the material information that we also captured at the beginning. And here's all our results. If you recall, we designated dimension 12 as a CTQ, so that's called out there. And there's your first article. Also have our material cert here. Okay, so that's the first article process. For those of you that are required to submit submission packages to your customers, PPAPs, APQPs, very similar process. Everything is templatized and tied to the processes that we've identified when we created our manufacturing operations and the process library that we have on as a part of your system. So I'm going to bring in another part just for the sake of time here, where I ballooned it. I created a little more operations, which you'll be able to see over here on the right. Size cut, drilling, turning, milling, and finish. So we have a module called PQP. So if I click this PQP records tab, This is where I can have specific indexes, which we call these indexes, think of it as like a series of documents. This is one example where all of these documents come in automatically tied to the processes that we've identified as part of our operations. Each one of these documents are linked to one another. So let's just jump in and let's show the process flow. This is an individual serialized application. This is my process flow that we've identified. Each one of these documents, by the way, does have a digital workflow associated with it. So if I click workflow, completely customizable in terms of who's involved and what happens at each stage. We support email notifications, e-signatures, where as you're kind of moving through the workflow, different people are getting notified. Um, and yeah, you just work it through this workflow, and ideally, you get this progress from 25% to 100%. Each one of these are at 25% because I have a four-stage workflow. We're on stage one. I mentioned it briefly, but each one of these documents are linked to one another. They're individually serialized. So, for example, if I change my process flow, my control plan, my FMEA, they're linked. So they're automatically going to reflect those changes. So from like an auditor's perspective, that's, from my understanding, one of the first places they'll look. Uh, they're going to be the same with IQA. So to show you the FMEA. Right? All tied to these processes that we've identified. Potential failure modes, effects, causes, severities, a whole bunch of stuff. Also, this is all editable. So it's that mindset of get things set up based on my preferences, my settings, automate downstream, but flexible enough to change if needed. Yeah, so that's the process. You'd click build final package. It'll consolidate all these documents into one single large PDF and ready to send to your customer. Um, so that was my goal to kind of end here around this time so that we have some time for kind of closing everything and ultimately question and answer. So let me just jump back into the PowerPoint here. I alluded to it super quickly. We have an open RESTful API as well as off-the-shelf ERP connectors. So being able to integrate with your existing solutions, ERPs, PLMs, MESs, definitely something we are able to do and a lot of customers utilize for us. Eliminating data entry is key to maximize efficiency. With that, hopefully you got an understanding of how configurable this system is in terms of how your processes work. That's what we'll set up. We have a full hands-on support process in terms of configuring everything to your processes, as I said. So we have an online academy where we walk you through videos, actually interactive videos, so you click through them, and then we'll supplement that with one-on-one individual training. Okay, so in short, HiQA, centralized database. It's your one-stop shop for everything for managing quality, operations, manufacturing, all inside of one system. We didn't touch on the 3D MBD capabilities. We just focused on a 2D, but you're going to be able to balloon, create your inspection plans, first articles, PPAPs, SPC, again, everything inside of one spot. Okay, so now let's just open up the floor to any questions you may have, and I'll do my best to answer.
All right, thanks again, Ryan. As it says on screen, we are transitioning to our Q&A period, and if you have any questions, please use the Q&A box on the right side of your screen to submit those. So our first question's in, is it possible to kind of start small and grow into the full functionality of HiQA, or really how easy is it to add on additional modules?
Yes, Yeah, absolutely. Let me go back to this. So this wheel, it visualizes everything that can be done. In terms of growing into a plan, I always use the analogy of walk before you run. Um, Definitely something that a lot of customers are doing. So, for example, I want to just start off with ballooning, creating inspection plans and first articles. Great. 6 months down the road, you want to add submission packages or connect to your CMMs. We can do that. We are an annual subscription service. So, for example, like using that 6 months example, we just prorate whatever the annual cost is. Um, Using the 6 months example, we divide that by two. That's what you would have to pay.
Sure. And then you've mentioned that there's a lot of different options for training, but how long does it take to implement the software in the first place and then to train on it?
Yeah, yeah, good question. Kind of also depends on level of complexity of your plan. Um, Using the example of, hey, we just want to get up and running on ballooning and inspection plans. It's just a couple of days. The main thing is getting it installed, um, working with your team. At the end of the day, you still need to make parts, so not halting production. One of the first things we'll do is with our welcome call is we'll establish an agreed upon timeline for what makes sense for you, what you're hoping to accomplish, um, and what the timeline is for accomplishing that. Um, Also, from a training perspective, there's a couple of different layers that I can go back to this. Um, this team handles. We have an online academy which is unlimited and self-paced, where it kind of teaches you where the buttons are. As I said, we have videos, overview videos, interactive videos where you're actually clicking through the video to proceed, just increases retention. And then we also have quizzes where you can get certified based on your role at the company and what's included in your plan. So it's definitely a hands-on approach, but in terms of a timeline, it's up to how fast you want to move, really. Anywhere from a couple days to 3 months.
Sure. And then for someone who currently manages all of their gauges through Excel, do they have to put in all of those gauges into IQA manually? Or is there some kind of automated or sped up process?
Yeah, absolutely not. Let me go back. So if we're looking at our gauge management here, we have the ability to import. So this is a little drop down. By no means are we expecting you to type in all of this information, whether that's through Excel or a third-party software. If it can export a CSV file or an XML file, um, we're going to be able to import that. No issues.
Sure. Okay. And then you've mentioned that there might be some difficulties in importing prints from like the 1970s or so. But for somebody who does have older paper prints, like what kind of resolution are we looking at? How, what would kind of be the limit for what can get imported?
Yeah, I would say I can't really give a definite answer. Um, as a recommended next step for all of those on this call, we would love to take a look at your own prints with you, where we dive much deeper into the software together. But yeah, with your own drawings. So if it's if it's hard for the human eye to read, there's only so much that our technology can do. I can confidently say we'll be second to none. Also, once you do it once, if it has to be a little manual based on the resolution, you're only going to have to do it once. At that point, the part record lives in the database. You can run multiple jobs up against it.
Sure. Okay. We have another question in that apart from recognizing symbols for size characteristics, can you recognize characters for performance, hardness, impact, yield strength, that kind of thing, or even just define characters yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. It would just be manual. So let me defining characteristics yourself. You would use this scissors icon that I'm hovering over here in the top left. So if I zoom in, let's just pretend there was something right here. And then that's where you use these drop down arrows, right? It's whatever the case is. But yes, 100%. And then kind of along the lines of what I previously said, once you do it once, you don't have to do it again.
All right. We are coming towards the end of our questions. So again, if you have any other questions, please use the Q&A box on the right side of your screen, and we'll get to those. We have another question. Does this software generate process flowcharts and control plans? And if so, what formats would they be available in? And can that balloon data be exported to different software packages?
Yeah, the answer to all of those is yes. All the forms, process flows, control plans, they're customized. I mean, based on what you would need. Through onboarding and implementation, we get those set up in the system for you. But then you'll also have access to the report designer yourself, which looks and functions just like Excel. So long story short, you can customize and get these whatever reports you need looking exactly how you want. In addition, being on annual subscription, you do have unlimited maintenance and support. So if you need us to help you walk through, little tinkering, it's all stuff we can do.
Sure. Okay. We have a couple of questions about whether are you able to export to NetInspect?
Yeah, I should probably just stay on this, but yeah, one of our export options, just going back, right? If this is a first article, I actually have it as a template here, a NetInspect Form 3 or the entire thing. And that's going to be a formatting that works with the NetInspect website. You export this out, you drop it into NetInspect, and all of those fields will automatically be populated for you. 100%.
Sure. All right. And then we have another question about whether the software can read CAT models, IGES, or step files instead of a drawing.
Yeah, we do support 3D capabilities. As long as there's PMI embedded in there and GD&T for us to extract, we're going to be able to automatically extract all the GD&T there. At that point, we just we extract it, convert it to a 2D, and kind of go through the same process that you saw here. Main thing is making sure it's a native and has PMI embedded in there. And we can certainly work with it very nicely.
Sure. We have another question about whether the software as it currently is supports integrations with AIs like ChatGPT or any other platforms.
I guess I'm not entirely sure what you mean by integrates with ChatGPT. We can take a note of this question and dive deeper in it with you. My initial thought is, currently that's not something we do. I do know AI is on the product roadmap in the near future, but I'm not really sure what is meant by integrating with those systems like ChatGPT. So I will certainly follow up with whoever asked that question.
Sure. All right. And then we have another question about cost. Just is that split up into modules, or is there one overall package that you start with?
Yep, it's definitely split up into modules and just depends on what you need and what your budget is. So plans are really determined by, like I said, what you need and how many people need it. Ranging anywhere from $4,000 a year to, and we have some customers paying 6 figures a year.
Sure. All right. I believe that brings us to the end of our questions for right now. So if anyone has further questions or wants to learn more, feel free to contact HiQA directly for assistance. Thank you again to Ryan for speaking today. As a reminder, today's presentation has been recorded and will be available for on-demand viewing shortly after we finish today. With that, thank you for taking the time out of your week to listen to us, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody.